Okay, this video is on reflections, which is another type of geometric transformation. And a reflection is just flipping an object. Specifically, it's flipping an object through, or you might say over, a line. So we're going to take a look at the two most common types of reflections, which is flipping an object over or through the x-axis and flipping an object through the y-axis. So in example number one, you see there in your notes, you've got this triangle ABC, with coordinates -1, 1, and B is 2, 4, and C is 4, 1. And it says reflect this triangle through the x-axis. So here's my x-axis right here, and in order to reflect an object through a particular line, in this case the x-axis, what you want to do is kind of imagine that there's a mirror on that line, and you're just going to imagine what the reflection of that object would look like if you had a mirror right there. So this object here is going to be reflected over this mirror that we have on the x-axis. So let's see what we're going to do essentially what we did before with translations, which is we are going to reflect each of our three vertices. So let's see, let me start with vertex A. If I reflect this vertex over the x-axis, that's going to put that point right here. That'd be point A prime, and that's going to be, let's see, -1, -1. Point B, let's see it, point is going to flip 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's going to be right down here is going to be B prime. And let's see, those coordinates are going to be 2, -4. And C is going to move down here, so C prime is going to be, let's see, 4, -1. So now that I have my three reflected vertices, I just need to connect those up. And now I've reflected my whole triangle through the x-axis. Now, if I want to come up with the algebraic rule for this reflection that I just did, remember the algebraic rule just tells me, using algebraic symbols, what do I need to do to each coordinate of my image, each coordinate of my pre-image, in order to transform it into my image. Well, I can see that for each one of my given coordinates, each one of my pre-image coordinates, all of the x coordinates stay the same. So whatever my given x coordinate is in my pre-image, it's going to be exactly the same in my image after I reflect it over the x-axis. My y coordinates, I notice, each one of my y coordinates, 4 becomes -4, 1 becomes -1, 1 becomes -1. Each one of my y coordinates, it's like I multiplied them times -1. So my y coordinates for my pre-image are going to become -y for my image. So this would be the algebraic rule for reflecting an object over the x-axis. Now let's take a look at example number 2, which says take this same triangle and this time reflect it through the y-axis. So now we're going to imagine that our mirror here is on the y-axis, and we're going to take this pre-image and we're going to reflect it over this mirror, this line here, the y-axis. Okay, so let's do that for each one of our vertex points. Let's see, A becomes A prime, so we're going to reflect that over here. So there's A prime. B is going to become B prime. Let's see, B is at 2, 4, So B is going to go over to this point right here, B prime. Let's see. And C, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be over here. C prime, if I reflect that over the y-axis. Now again, I just need to connect up my vertices, and I have my reflected triangle. Now this one, I notice I had some of my original points, some of the points in my pre-image were on this side of the y-axis, and one of my points, one of my vertices was on this side, so it turns out it kind of straddles that y-axis, my axis of reflection there. But that just means that my two images are kind of overlapping, which is okay. So now let's see, let me go and fill in my points again, and so I can find out what the coordinates of my image are going to be. So let's see, A started out again as -1, 1, and so A prime, that point is now 1, 1. B is 2, 4, and B prime is -2, 4. And let's see, C is 4, 1, and C prime is -4, 1. So now I shouldn't have too much trouble coming up with my algebraic rule. Here's my pre-image, the coordinates for my pre-image. And these are going to be the coordinates for my image. So what do I need to do to my x and y coordinates in order to turn them into the x and y coordinates of my reflected image? Well, let's see. Since I'm reflecting over the y-axis, let's see, my y coordinates, I notice, all stay the same. C, there's my y coordinate, C prime, same y coordinate, B, the y coordinate, B prime, the same y coordinate. So all my y coordinates in this case, my y coordinates for my image are exactly the same as the y coordinates for my pre-image. So that one's easy. My x coordinates, I notice that all of my x coordinates for my pre-image, they become the negative of whatever they were for the pre-image. So B started out as a +2, it becomes a -2. C started out as a +4, it becomes a -4. A started out as a -1, and A prime becomes a +1. So there is my algebraic rule for reflecting an object through the y-axis.